All right. Hey, welcome to Art of the Game here over at Cabbit Crossing. And,
Hi.
if you're new here, we're three experienced game masters, wide range of different games, and we're going to share some tips and tricks with you. And this brainchild, mind baby, whatever, I don't know. It's the creation of Woody originally. So let's have him
Yeah.
introduce the topic.
Yes.
We'll try to give more than just the tip.
Thank you, Greg. I will give several tips. So we have the debate
Some
of
tricks.
rules as written versus rules as intended. We were just are you okay there, Greg?
I died. Hold on.
So yeah, we were just discussing this off camera. Is this a good topic? And I was saying it is, because like we are in an era where there's so many people entering the industry, as fans and players and game masters, and some of these topics which may have been covered before, these new people never heard about it. And it's interesting that this particular topic kind of goes in cycles, because in the old days it wasn't like you just played the game, you played D&D, right? And we were, but and the GM interpreted it and they were happy, but then eventually we had the rules lawyer, and people that were trying to be a stickler to how the game must be played. And in the era of like D&D 3.5 and Pathfinder, this hectic debate occurred over should be rules exactly as written or rules as intended, because the creators of the games clearly intended something, but maybe they're not good at how they wrote it down, and they put ambiguity in there, and there was a lot of ambiguity in the original edition of D&D. And so it's an interesting debate, and I think the correct answer is somewhere in the middle. But why don't we start off with the two of you? Greg, what do you think?
I obviously think rules as intended is king, and a lot of those intentions you have to make assumptions because you don't know exactly how they intended, right? It's kind of like how people look at the Constitution now. Is it rules as written or rules as intended? Well, you have to go read what all of them said at the time if you want to see how it's intended, right?
And you have to understand that language.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
They didn't know how to make sentences. Anyways. Where was I going with that? So I am very much on the rules as intended fence of this. I don't. To me, it's not even a debate in my head, because yes, rules as written can be morphed and used in terrible ways. Mm-hmm. And why would you not just go the way that they intended it? Because they're the ones making the game and hopefully balancing the game and stuff like that. You know,
Marks.
Yeah, I feel how it's intended is best. If you're brand new, you may have to go by written at first just to figure out how the game works. But then you can start going with making changes as it makes sense. Because the main thing is you want to make sure you're having fun. So if a rule's getting in the way, figure out how you can change that, use it the way it's intended, and be consistent with that change. You don't be willy-nilly with it.
In terms of game design, that's one thing that I think is important, is having consistent game design to where there's kind of a central theme around how everything works. Like DC-20 has to succeed by 5, and everything's just kind of around that, so it's easy to see what the intention was in most cases. Daggerheart is a little worse than that, in my opinion, because every little thing is a mini game in that, and it's always different, it seems like. But the 5e, it's somewhere in the middle. Like, you can kind of guess how things should be if you just use it enough. But
for me, once I became a game developer, this was something that's definitely been on my mind a lot, right? Because when you're making one of these things, right, what ends up happening is like, you want rules as intended, and the GM's job is to interpret these things. And but like the problem is that that debate exists and it's going to happen, right? And so when you're creating a game, whether you're inventing a system from scratch or adapting one, as in the case of what I did, you have to consider that you're rewriting everything and you're presenting the rules in a new format, and you've basically just entered an entirely new cycle of that situation, right? And because that clearly the three of us are kind of a similar mindset on it, but the reality is you're the one writing the game, and what you write is what you intend. But you have to be prepared for the idea that some people are going to
interpret it differently.
And I think this comes back to a point we made previously, and potentially the question of, and I guess we're now in a rules lawyer episode, because the reality is that you are going to have inevitably you're going to get a rules lawyer at the table, right? And rules lawyers are kind of toxic, right? To have what we call a toxic player, but like some of these people are just obsessed with the rules because they don't feel it's fair if somebody's interpreting.
I think it matters if to take prosecution or defense.
Yeah. But there is another side of it, and it's something that I've personally had to deal with many times, is that sometimes you have players that they're going to behave like a rules lawyer, but what they really are is they're out for me. They're out for number one, right? And so what they're actually doing is they are looking at a situation. They want a ruling that favors them. It has, whether or not it fits game mechanics is actually not really even relevant. They simply want what they want. They want that ruling, and they're going to try to back you into a corner to make a ruling that favors them, or create a ruling that they can then use to get something else they want later. And it's they're playing a different game, right?
Especially if they found it online and they're just following this build of some broken thing that someone found.
Oh, I'm not even looking at that. Like literally, like just, this is more like this person is not actually playing the role-playing game. They're playing, I want to win in a game where you can't win. They won't be the star and win. RPG is about the experience and the journey and the camaraderie with your friends and having this cooperative storytelling experience. And the ultimate victory, hopefully, is defeating the enemy at the end. You don't always. Hopefully, they do. But like, you don't actually win an RPG. You experience an RPG. But these guys are trying to win.
But if you get a happy ending, it's kind of a win, right?
Yeah.
Or don't die, or go crazy.
I was gonna say, it depends what you call winning. But I would say there is an honest version of this where it's not toxic, where a person read something, they interpret the rules a certain way. They don't know us three here are into the sphere enough that we can be like, oh, okay, this is obviously what they intended, right? Without even looking at it too deeply. Whereas someone else could read it and be like, oh, it's exactly what it says. I can do this, this, and this. They build their character on it. And then when the game comes, you're like, that doesn't work like that. And it destroys it.
Yeah.
You have to be kind to that type of person. Because that person, you have to be well, that's kind of how it works. But I'll let you, pick a different thing or, something like that, because there is an honest version of that.
That's true. And I've had the experience, and I'm, of course, would never call anyone out, but there are people out there who, like, they're really into it, but not to a crazy level, right? And so they kind of forget, and you sometimes have to keep reminding them of things. Like they'll have like, you've discussed this not you, Greg, but like like you've discussed the same magic spell 3 times, like it doesn't work this way, and and there's kind of like, we know it's not that powerful because it's a low level spell, and so
minor illusion.
I feel like that's 2 different kind of players you're talking about. 2 player archetypes. Yeah. One is the casual player.
One is toxic, one's honest.
Well, maybe 3, because there's one's the casual player who, like, I'm playing this game because I like to be with my friends, but I have a hard time memorizing rules, and
that's that's fine, because like the person wants to be there and they're having a great time and they are contributing, right? And so be patient. But like I've got a guy who was playing with us for a while in one of my games, and we were sad to see him go because this life stuff, But like he's as he put it, he's a recovered rules lawyer. It's also funny that he's actually a lawyer. So, but he told me that he had a real tough time with like backing off. But it's like the thing about a rules lawyer, and if you are a rules lawyer listening to this, like you have to respect the shield, because if you don't respect the shield, the GM is not going to respect you. And like the rules lawyers, I think, are inherently going to have a rough time because they are basically pissing off the GM. It's why they say as an attorney, you don't piss off the judge, right? And it's the same concept, because like the GM is going to be harder on you and is not going to give you what you want, and is going to actively stand in your way rather than try to create an experience for you, because you're now in opposition to them. You're now an enemy. You're making yourself an enemy, and like. You should settle down a little bit and back off.
That being said, it's okay to question something. Like, one thing I usually do, because we could have a whole episode on how to be a player when you're usually a DM, because you do develop bad habits as a DM when you go into being a player.
Yes, we do. We do, absolutely. Yeah.
But the the one thing that I usually do is I say, if they do something I think doesn't fit the rules, I'll usually say, I think it actually works this way according to the book, but you're the DM. It's up to you. I'm good with whatever ruling you do. I usually frame it like that. And if they say one way or another, I immediately just accept it, no matter what they say.
That's what I've done too. Yeah.
One of my players has occasionally stepped in as a GM over the years, kind of like hasn't now because he kind of had his magnum opus campaign, and it's like, I can never do better. I'm done, But like there were times he stepped in and he basically told me right off the bat, it's like, I understand you're you, basically acknowledging like I'm clearly superior as a GM, but he's going to do it and he's going to disagree with me, and he just wanted to make sure that we're not, going to have a problem. And you got it. Because, but I think though that you should also allow somebody to make their case. Like I always have an open policy. Yeah. If you disagree, you make your case. I will hear you. But once we made a decision, that's it. We got to keep going.
Yep.
Right. And it's like, I'm not going to agree with your point. I will consider any reasonable argument. And if you make a fair case, because you ask my players, I will side with them plenty. And I think in a lot of cases, I actually kind of inherently would default to their requests because I want them to have fun. But
same here.
I'm not always going to agree. And I have a very good reason for my disagreement, and I don't have to tell you what it is because I don't want to ruin your experience by revealing too much. Mm-hmm. And like, because the GM's supposed to keep their secrets, and those secrets are there to preserve your good time. and so if I say no, if I disagree, there's a reason, and I don't have to tell you. But you have to acknowledge the GM is trying to create a good experience for everybody, and let them do their job.
Yeah, keep in mind, like some game systems call a GM a referee or a judge. There's a reason why.
Yeah.
And you know what? If you really still disagree with them, just don't do it in the session. We have this thing called AOL Instant Messenger now, and you can just dial up onto it and go message your
really?
GM.
We have AOL now. Nice. Wow, that's neat, Greg. I didn't know. I'll have to use it.
Yeah, that's what I do. I pull up my phone and use that, and you hear like a little modem beeping going off.
You flip your phone out, right? And
when I flip it out.
So we're going to now run commercials for the company that will take your money forever and doesn't give you anything
AOL?
For it.
Yeah, I don't know how they're still around, but
are they still around?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh my god, no way. Okay,
I see people with AOL emails still.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
But I think rules as intended wins. The only thing that trumps rules as intended is GM rules.
Yeah,
right. But
well, they say story trumps rules, but
yeah.
I think, however, that ultimately what was written was what was intended. I think you still have to, there are times when you have to resolve a dispute, well, this is actually what it says, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that it works best when the GM is pretty literate, able to understand the book. There's no misunderstanding, because it's also it's nothing worse than simply you're a GM, you're running some situation, and the GM player's actually, this is what the book says. And yeah, but I mean, you're going to get those situations too, right? That is going to happen. And if that's the case, you got to be prepared to pivot, man, because you're not going to be right every time. They say the GM's always right. Technically that's true. But if somebody does call
your game, if that's the case,
well, if somebody calls you out, you have made a mistake, then you have to be prepared to pivot, Yeah.
And that being said,
yeah.
Never just stop the game if it's going to take you a while to look it up. Just
Agreed.
As a warning, if it's going to take less than a minute, look it up real quick. If it's going to take more than that, just make a ruling and look it up after.
Yeah, and if you made a ruling and it's been a few minutes gone by, you moved on, and then somebody brings it up, then just go. We're not retroactively changing anything. We're moving forward.
Yeah. Always go forward. I mean, if somebody says they don't want to die and they make that case so they don't die.
Yeah,
that's now.
Yeah, that's
there are cases where you do want to spend more than a minute. Yes,
or they lost that arm.
Well, I mean, well, as I've said before, I subscribe to the 30-second rule. You have 30 seconds to find the reference. You can get a lot done in 30 seconds. If you can't find it, if nobody can find it, you make a ruling. You move on.
I'm gonna do that. Somebody loses an arm or dies, I'm gonna I'm gonna turn on I'm gonna do an hourglass. You have 30 seconds to find a loophole and get yourself back to life.
Okay. I got to tell you guys something hilarious. So we had a player who was kind of had a habit for complaining, like debating, arguing some point, and this friend of mine I just mentioned earlier maybe was not as good at handling those arguments as I would have been, and so what he did was he spent the week between games looking up the saddest violin music he could find on YouTube, put it on a cassette, and then he was waiting for that thing, and as soon as the guy started his complaining, he goes, hold on, goes over, hits the tape deck. The sad music are playing. He says, "Okay, now continue." It was just,
that makes it so much worse.
It was oh my god! This friend of ours, he just stopped. He just could not believe what he was hearing. And to his credit, he just hammed it up and immediately got worse and just started making him sound so sad and
he got music for it. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it was fun times.
Yeah.
So
I've
you can
always
also
been
do
impressed.
that.
Yeah, I've always been impressed with how fast Matt Mercer can look up rules.
It's because he already knows where they are, right?
He knows general locations. Yeah.
So when I was playing, this is what I'm doing this week, is I'm whipping out this book all the time. But one of the things that blew my players' minds is that when I would be playing this game, right, I could literally just open the book and flip to a page, and I knew where it was. And I'm not proud of this because it's really nerdy. And that means I was reading every book 3 times. But there was a point when I could flip to anything in any book, and it's good to know the rules, right? Know it well. That's kind of where your power comes from as a GM in a lot of ways. Is when the players know that they're not going to screw with you nearly as much. But you don't have to do that. I am a very rare category when it comes to that stuff, and it's only with that one game, right? It's not with other things, and you don't have to be like that. You don't have to be a Matt Mercer. I think Matt Mercer is actually a bad example for us because he's something he is this epitome of skill that none of us can ever achieve. I have the knowledge base. I don't have the presentation, and it kills me. But
he's a voice actor.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
you need that hair.
That hair. Yeah, that flowing hair, right? I've got a friend he can deliver the presentation beautifully, but it's I'm always going to be better than him at skill, but I can never match his presentation, and it sucks. And it's just how it is, right? You have to play your strengths, and so
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. A lot of the
my strengths have never been rules either.
Yeah, a lot of the top GMs, I feel like they just find what they're really good at. Some are better at improv comedy, and some are better at voice acting and drama.
Well, that's why I brought that up in our first episode. Is you should play to your strengths. Figure out where you're good, double down on that, and then build your entire thing around that, and the rules will come.
I'm very good at hand puppets, so I'm just saying next time.
Marks, I think we got an episode.
Yeah, I think so too. With the hand puppets, let's move on to next episode. All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching, and don't forget, you got comments. You can put comments in there. Let us know what your thoughts are. Should you follow the rules exactly? Should you go by attendant? What are some stories to share where you've had to make certain calls or any questions you have for us? Go ahead and put that in the comments. We do read it. And thanks a lot for watching. So until our next Art of the Game, we'll talk to you later.
When the dice roll high, we touch the sky. But when they crash, it's a belly laugh. Genre play, lighting the way. Our tales unleash the wild rampage through